Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to the Singles Connect community. We're here again to bring you guys another amazing topic to discuss. I know you guys haven't seen us in a few weeks, but we're full back in the swing of things to chop it up. And tonight we have another great topics to bring to you guys. We are talking about doing boundaries correctly. And I know we have all set boundaries in our lives. Some of us are, it's a new word for us. So let me just say that because not all of us have implemented boundaries in our lives, but boundaries are very good, especially healthy boundaries. So tonight we're going to dive into the different ways we should be looking at how we should be doing boundaries correctly. So guys, do the needful. If you're new to joining us, subscribe, like, share. If you're not new, welcome back. Continue to support us. Leave your comments. Let you know what we think, and follow us on social media platforms. We are on Instagram. All right, so I have my beautiful co-host with me. I have Dr. OJ, and I have the handsome Akon King. How is everybody doing this evening?
Wonderful, wonderful. Glad to be back. 2 week summer break. I think that's what we took. We took a summer hiatus.
Yep. Yeah. It's
Yes,
definitely good to be here.
celebrating the 4th of July.
Yeah. So, Stacy, what you got for us tonight? What are we talking about today?
Okay, so we're talking about doing boundaries correctly. And as I said before, I think it's now that we are in the whole health phase, it's becoming a staple now amongst the culture. Where since the pandemic, I think it's become more aware. People are becoming more health conscious, thinking about their mental health, their spiritual health, as well as their physical health. So people are now developing different words in their leprechaun that they never had before. One of them is boundaries. Some of it is also you will hear like toxicity or I'm protecting my peace. Although sometimes I think some of the words are abused and overly used. And I think sometimes some people use these words also to avoid accountability. And that's where I have the problem and want to draw the line. Like t- calling people, trying to get people to be accountable for their actions. Nowadays is like okay, you are attacking me or you are invading my personal space. I feel threatened. You're toxic. When some of the time it's really just trying to hold people accountable for your behavior, for the things you do. So now we're on this weird space in our culture that I'm not quite sure that I like because we have replaced some of these things with these people now abusing some of these health words or these health supposedly things that we're supposed to be using to protect ourselves, but it's not being abused. So I don't know what you guys think about that, or I guess as we dive deeper into the conversation, we can come to some conclusion of what are the healthy boundaries so you can better identify them so you can also know when people are gaslighting you into actually putting up this wall so now you feel you become victimized by the people that are actually victimizing you because they make you now feel like you're the problem, if that makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense. You know, the Gen Z, and this was a conversation I had, and this is not an attack to the Gen Z because I love the Generation Z,
Hmm.
the Gen Zs, but their generation took mental health to a whole nother issue. You affect
Yes.
any little thing is an attack on their mental health. And it
Yes.
became like a thing like, oh no, my mental health. I'm like, seriously, that is a very serious thing. And their generation just took it and bastardized that word,
Hmm.
and it became an excuse for everything. It became
Yeah.
so bad that I had some fellow entrepreneurs who ran businesses and just employing, maybe people with businesses that have about two, three, four, 5 to 10 employees, and they would be, they would have some of these Gen Zs on staff, and your lack of productivity, my mental health. You come late to work, you're affecting my mental health. You don't deliver on an, and one guy was like, I'm like that. He was like, it was one of his female workers, and the next it was like she had said it 3 times, and after the first, it was like, you're fired. Your mental health or not, get out of here. Like he just like leave my place of business with that
Wow.
foolishness. So even in relationships, holding each other accountable. Now we have
Hmm.
a group of people who automatically term you trying to hold me accountable, or even just have a simple conversation conversation like, let's talk about something that is not right here. Oh no, no, that is my mental health. And I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
that is one thing that I've noticed, and it's just a pet peeve, like, enough already.
But the crazy thing though, Dr. OJ, I've noticed is that it's not just the Gen Z, yes, they have took it to a whole nother level. But I will say, because we are still considered millennials, if I'm saying that right, for
Hmm.
us that are still in our 40s.
Yeah, millennials.
Well, they now, what they have done is, well, let me just preface this by saying, so the toxic one of us, the unhealthy one of us that are not self-aware, we have no scruples about us, our morals are all over the place in our character. What they have done is now taken these mental health situation, and they're using it against their spouse and people they're in relationship with. So there's no more trying to have an honest conversation about someone's behavior and how that is affecting me and how you're treating me, and trying to have the conversation about healthy boundaries. Like, I cannot allow you to talk to me this way, I cannot allow you to treat me this way, and if you're not showing up in a certain kind of way, then we can continue. They turn that in around into calling people now, oh, you're just a toxic human being, or you just like drama, or languages like that is what I see going around in social media, and people even having conversation online, like, and I'm like, but how is a person toxic for holding you accountable to the fact that you are mistreating me, you are not treating me well, you are not a decent person? So they have, when I say mental health has been completely abused, it's been completely abused till now. It's like, the saying, you grow up when you hear the, now you don't even know who to take seriously, because it's like the boy who cried wolf. That's the way, that's what is happening now. So the people that are really being abused, or the people that are really needing help, they're not being taken seriously, because you have so many other people out there that are abusing it. So people are just, now you've become immune and numb to these people fake tears, the waterworks, and these fake, I need a mental day, or I'm you're bad for my mental health, or you're damaging to who I am, and all of these type of things. But I'll let Akan chime in here and give us his thoughts, or if Dr. OJ have anything else to give to this topic. But yeah, I'm personally exhausted by some of these people.
One of the most popular words now is I'm triggered. Triggered.
Yes.
What you said to me triggered me.
Oh my gosh, yes, you're right.
Just to be very politically correct, when I just bust out laughing, I'm like,
Yeah, I
exactly.
was. Why did you? Why did
And
you do? Why did you do this? Why did you react? Why did you answer in a rude way? I was
yeah,
triggered. I was
and
triggered.
and guys, even though we're not making light of this, as I said before, because we know
Yeah.
there are people out there that are actually suffering, and
Yeah.
people that are being abused, and people that are being taken advantage of, and people that do need to learn to set healthy boundaries so
Mm.
they can have better relationship, not just a romantic relationship, but professional relationship, social relationship. But it, as I said before, it still is humorous. There still is, because the culture has taken it to another level, to now, as I said before, as I can't rightly say, you don't know who to take seriously anymore, because there's
Mhm.
so much abuse across the culture with these things,
Yeah.
and people are taking advantage of it, so you don't know who's crying wolf really.
Yeah. All we can do is try. All we can do is try right now.
Sorry.
Okay. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm triggered. There's someone I know, like, she's always like this. So one day she said, "Oh, they just be triggering me." I said, "I'm sorry, AK-47."
I'm sorry, so what did she say is triggering her?
He was like, "Oh, cause oh no, she's completely out of order. Always very inappropriate.
Okay.
No death
Yeah.
room, nothing. Just always weird and just disrespectful." She was like, "Oh, they just be triggering me." I said, "First of all, bad grammar. Second of all, sorry, AK-47." She was like,
Wow.
"What?" I was like, "Yeah, you need to really like." At some point, I feel like there's some people like you just need to
Hmm.
let them know, like, look, this is the mirror. This is you. Like, stop already.
So basically, she is using the word trigger to excuse her bad behavior, for her being
Everything.
hostile
Yes.
and just being a person that is ill mannered and doesn't know
You
how
know
to
how I grew
control
up. You know
her
what I've
mouth.
been through. You know what my mother put me through. They be trigger me. I'm like, you are 50 something years old. At some point, that stops being an excuse. It starts being
Yes.
the reason you are just the way you are. Own it, fix it, move on, or you just let us be.
Yeah. And it's the same thing like when people say it's just the way I am. Like to me, I think that's an excuse. It's an excuse for people to remain in a bad state, remain in a place where you don't want to grow, you don't want to do the work to change, you don't want to do the work to grow, you don't want to do the work in becoming better. So you just lay back and say, "Oh, this is the way I am." And to me, a lot of times I think that's with certain behaviors and certain attitude, or the way some people carry themselves, is to me that's just an excuse. It's just an excuse for you to be comfortable in staying in whatever unhealthy habits you have.
Yeah, let's have an honest conversation about boundaries. Boundaries are meant to define, protect, and really, just draw the line on things, on where people shouldn't cross, or something shouldn't be crossed, or a line that shouldn't be crossed, or what should protect you. This
Hmm.
is how you do boundaries, and everyone is responsible for whatever boundaries that they have in their lives. I
Yes.
think the reason why now it looks like the lines are blurred because there's a lack of accountability. There's a lack of intention to put in the thought as to what your boundaries should be, as to how you should go about your boundaries, as should how it should be implemented, and how people should work around to it. And so people are just doing whatever they want. Before you even set boundaries for people, you need to set boundaries for yourself. What are the boundaries that I shouldn't cross for myself? you know and so what we're saying now is that those lines are blurred in terms of the
Hmm.
culture. I was having a conversation with someone today, and we was talking about, even in terms of with women, how men really don't a lot of men are not seeing a reason to really get married again because um there's access, compared back in the day. There's more access. You can get everything that you want in a marriage without getting married. You can get everything you want in a relationship without being in a relationship. Too much access. That is part of boundaries. That is part of a weakened boundary system. It's part of that, and so I think just being able to build a healthy boundary is very important, because it sort of like allows you to like go in your in the way of your goal and your purpose. So yeah, so to your point, accountability is there, how you need to move, all of that stuff. So we can definitely go into that more and talk about it and see.
So
Okay.
I think it's more of a lack of understanding, right? A lot of people and the world has become so watered down, whereby we're living in a very, very, the world we're living in is it's watered down. That's the best term I could use. Where originality is no longer praised, where so many people don't even hold near and dear. For example, let me tell you, I hosted an event yesterday. It was for a 50th birthday party of this woman. She's Muslim, married, beautiful family, and of course she does the whole covering of, based on her Muslim faith. And because it was her party, and some of her friends were there when she was like, no, today is just for today, don't do the normal thing. She was like, no, this is who I am, and I came in and she was like, oh, doctor, oh, that's my MC, what do you think? I said, well, what are you comfortable with? What are you comfortable with? Do that. You do that which you're comfortable with, which is her being covered up and just doing her
Hmm.
regular thing. I said, if that's what she, let her do that. So now she was able to kind of maintain her boundaries regardless of the circumstances. Someone is saying, oh, bend your beliefs a little bit just because it's this one day. It's not going to make a difference. But I really respected her for her holding true to that, knowing that, okay, even if it's just this one day, I'm still going to maintain the boundaries and the standards that I've set for myself. And that for me was like everything. But the world lacks a lot of those kinds of people anymore. We're so watered down in our belief system. So, of course, when we see and say, oh, a lot of men don't want to get married because there is access, that's because there's so many watered down values. Yes, the ones that don't want to get married because they think they have access do not really understand the fundamental meaning of having that committed relationship with one person. They don't understand the safety that they give themselves and the longevity that they provide for themselves when they create those boundaries to restrict themselves to waiting for, or at least cultivating a healthy, wholesome relationship. So that might be one of the reasons why we have, lack of boundaries. And it's like they say, a city without walls that would easily be robbed. And that's what we see. People getting hurt, getting maimed, and so many things happening in the human space today that's, it's just due to mostly lack of boundaries.
Yeah, accountability goes both ways, you know. It goes both ways for the men and the women. But, you know, there's things that people do, like even with things that men do that I ask and I say, why would a man come to a woman and she lets him know he's married and she's like, yeah, it's fine. I know you're married, but I still want your number. I want to be friends. Or they tell you, you know, whatever, I can take care of you, whatever. And I always say, only reason someone is going to do that is because they've done it with somebody and it worked. And so they believe it can work on someone else, you know. And so basically, it's a certain behavior encourages other behaviors, and it pushes it, right? And you know, to your point, it's based on the value system. The value system is changing from what it was. The new, you know, the new currency is attention. Attention is the new currency. Can you be loud as you can? Can you make sure people look at you? Can you get their attention on social media, get your followers? How can you make people turn their attention to you as much as you can? And so people are doing different things and, you know, all that stuff. So basically, the reason why we're going to see, you know, broken boundaries or no boundaries at all is that, first of all, the value system is changing. You know, it's eroded to something else, you know. So and I sure at some point we're going to talk about, like, I think what women want and what men want, but basically the people's wants and needs are changing.
Yes,
Yeah,
I
based
agree.
on their values, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and you know that's what we're seeing. You know, it's like some people don't even know to even sit and think of, like, longevity to them is like, you're just, what are you talking about? What? They don't even know what that means. Like, they don't even want to think about it, you know. And they
Yes,
don't
that's
also
yeah.
understand that it's also tied to your lifespan, your health, all of those things. And you know, so we're seeing a lot of that as well. So it's definitely, the dynamics are definitely changing. And you know, it's left for those who have built that discipline. And the truth is, honestly, you know, I have this conversation a lot of times where, you know, if it were easy, everybody would do it. So we are definitely having a fewer number of people who are sticking to commitment and putting values in place. And it's not easy, right? It's work. But the vast majority, everyone's just doing what they want, you know. So
I
we're here
I agree
advocating
with
for,
both of you.
we're here advocating for the for things to be done the right way, you know.
I agree with both of you, Akan and Dr. OJ. And so, okay, so in setting healthy boundaries, one of the things that I know when I was, just looking at the whole topic that they talked about, or you have to be, if clear communication has to be there, as well as identifying your limits, because you have to know once you set those boundaries, you said you first have to learn to set the boundaries for yourself before you can start setting them for other people, and then you have to also make sure that you know what your limit is. So whenever you're getting to that breaking point, you can say, okay, I've had enough. Now I've reached my limit. I have effectively communicate to you what my boundaries are, and you are pushing the envelope. You continue to, whatever, you're blurring the lines, or you continue to get into my space. Now I'm at my limit. So how do you think, or what is the right way do you think someone needs to go about clearly identifying your limits, and then communicating clearly and be consistent, because those are some of the things you have to do, is to identify clearly what your limits are, then communicate clearly what those limits are and those boundaries are, and then being consistent with the things that you are communicating, or the things that you're saying is these are my boundaries. This is my deal breaker, or whatever word you want to use for it.
I'll let Akan go first on this one, then I'll come after him.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the thing about boundaries and is that communication is good, and you have to know your boundaries first before you communicate. But when you communicate, after you communicate, what people do is people are going to watch you. So communication has to be followed with effective action. So you have to
Mm-hmm.
leave what you say you are going to do. And a lot of people just say this is what I want to do, but they don't go through with it. And they leave the opposite, or they're relaxed, they don't do stuff and anything. And someone who's watching, who is trying to test you, because the thing I always say is we are all beings that flow with power, and the thing with power is that power must be tested. That's what I always tell people. No matter who you are, we are the president, Nigeria. If you can see, we have different scenarios. Woman, man. No matter how much your husband loves you, or your wife loves you, if you're a powerful person, you will be tested. Because the only way to know that power is true power is that it has to be tested, and that's how you know it's power. It's the same thing with the electricity. It shocks you when you get electric shock. You cannot say power did that thing. So that's how boundaries are. So boundaries will be tested.
Mm-hmm.
People will test your
Okay.
boundaries, and you have to, literally, it has to be a part of you to where you you're so into your boundaries and so into, and honestly it's not something you act, it's based on where you're going. You're so into it that you are able to respond based on what you said you're going to do, so well that the person knows that, okay, this guy, when it comes to, or this lady, when it comes to this, she don't play, you know
Mm-hmm.
um so I would say just actions, living that is there. And if there are consequences that you should implement when someone crosses your boundary, you have to be ready to implement those consequences, with thought, with a good thought process, based on, if this is something that doesn't sit at all, it shouldn't sit at all with you, it shouldn't be done. You have to be ready, because if you don't, and they see that you don't, they're going to do it again. Yeah, like, you're not going to do anything, it's fine, it's okay. So you have to be ready to, you have to be ready to understand what it means to actually have that healthy boundaries, communicate it, follow it with action, and also be ready to implement consequence when somebody does not abide by that, which is also a form of accountability, so that they understand that this is the type of person, or this is your kind of person. So, yeah.
So yeah, I agree with Akan and everything he said. But obviously, I believe in saying what you mean and meaning what you say. A lot of times when we get in relationships, for both men and women, we tend to talk around the issue because we're trying to either watch or be mindful of the other person's emotions. You feel like you don't want to say certain things exactly the way you mean to say them. I am learning honestly to say exactly what I mean. For example, if I say, well, my expectation is, like, someone asked me, like, oh, why are you still single? I said, because a lot of men just want to date for dating. I want to date to get a husband. And they make you feel like that's thirsty because you're saying that, like, why don't you just see where it goes? And eventually he feels like you're a good wife, then he'll wife you. I said, no. I said, because, yeah, probably been there, done that, because I bought into that narrative of thinking that's the way it's supposed to be. But over time, evolving, learning, becoming more self aware, and knowing exactly what God has for me is me knowing that if a man comes with the intention of being a husband, he already knows that. And even before he approaches me, his mind is already made up that that is the position that I'm supposed to be in his life. So he'll come to me with the right conversation. And when the right conversation is being had, then we can make the right choices together. But once the conversation is going a different way and you're like, oh, I like it, no, 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 I'm not interested. It's not arrogance, it's not pride, and it's not just being overly picky. It's just knowing what I want and being very assertive enough to let you know, look, I'm not trying to date you for a boyfriend. I'm not looking for that. So I'm dating to have a husband, and obviously you're not in that mind space, so there's no conversation to be had. So saying what we mean and meaning what we say. And I think for women, the older we get, the more assertive we become. Like, oh, look, at this age, if I'm not going to tell you exactly what I mean, then when am I really going to do that? But the younger ladies, they still want to dance around it and feel like, oh, I don't want to scare the men away. I don't want them to feel like I'm too much. Oh, look, in your 40s, you learn to be way too much. You learn to occupy space, take up all the space, and let the man that can handle that come, be there in that space with you. So, yeah, it's okay for us to be able to say what we mean and mean what we say. And, try to handle that. I think that's a clear way of setting those boundaries.
Hmm.
Yeah, I completely agree with both of you. And it's funny, Dr. OJ, that you mentioned being assertive, because that was one of the I specifically remember that when I was looking up even what the word boundary means, that was one of the words that was used, is actually being assertive in your convictions, and actually, saying what it is that you mean, and saying it with authority, is the word I'm looking for. Being assertive in what you want, and be saying it with authority, so people understand that I am serious. Like, this is where I'm at. Take it or leave it. These are my clear boundaries. These are the boundaries I've set for myself. This is what I've been practicing. Because again, guys, we talk about consistency. Akan talk about clear communication. Dr. OJ talk about being assertive, meaning what you say, and not just doing it for lip service. So all of those things are encompassed of you getting people to actually take you seriously. It's not, oh, I'm just doing this because it's the common or popular thing to do now, or it's what the culture is doing now. It's like, if you keep doing, it's like the definition of insanity. If you keep doing the same thing over and over again, you're going to consistently get the same result. You have to stand for something, or you fall for everything. So again, guys, so we're talking about here doing boundaries correctly. If you're just now joining us, we have talked about that you have to clearly communicate, you have to know what your limits are, and then you have to be consistent. As a concept, people are going to test you, but they're also going to watch you to see if what you're saying is what you really want. So now, I guess my next question is, so how do you, because he talks about people testing you. So how, when these people, when you're clearly, you understand your limit, you have identified those, what those limits are, you have clearly communicated them, you're being consistent, but then you have these people that are coming to test you to see if, are you who you say you are, do you really believe in these things, how do you navigate those people are, and still keep your standard and your wits about you without being disrespectful?
Do you want me to go?
That's fine.
But the floor is
Okay.
for
Okay.
anyone.
So yeah.
It's just, something
Well,
that.
well, well. The thing, in like, especially like when we're talking about scenarios, honestly, we're talking more here because this is a relationship podcast. So it
Uh-huh.
gets tough because you're trying to let the person who you're with know your boundaries, and one of the reasons why they actually feel like they can actually push it is because y'all are probably emotionally involved, right? And so when emotions get involved, it's a little tougher to enforce because now your the feelings can be get mixed, so you have mixed feelings and stuff. And but I think that's why it's important to really sit down and think and have a conversation and think to yourself, like, that's why I tell people, like, marriage commitment, what does it mean to allow somebody to constantly violate what I told them not to do, to allow somebody to constantly see me in this light? What is the long term repercussion of that? What is the long term repercussion of me allowing this person to be lazy in this relationship, or me allowing this person to gossip, about certain things, and I don't gossip as a person, or whatever it could be? And when you think about that, I mean, for me, the way that I do it is I think about it, and the thing with thinking about stuff like that is that your brain starts to look out for situations, whether it's online, whether it's on Instagram, whether it's with people who have been in that kind of encounter, and then you see the results of what has happened. So you look around and you see great marriages, you look around and see great relationships, and you see patterns that have, and I'm just speaking for myself, that have consistently yielded this. And sometimes you have even older people tell you, people who are your older friends, about, don't do this when you're with this kind of with a woman, or don't do this when you're with the man. Like, make sure you're this, make sure you're, and you've seen these results, And so when you think about things like that, those are the kind of things that I feel motivate you to be able to say, hey, listen, now I've got to devise a way to either let my message known uh to whoever is doing this thing. And you know, disrespect really comes when you react, if we're being honest here. Whenever you choose
Mhm.
to respond, you will hardly be disrespectful. You know, there's a difference between reacting and responding. A lot of people react because, you know, they become emotional. So you become emotional. And of course we're emotional human beings, but you have to, that's why we talk about practice. You have to train yourself to understand that this is the type of person that I'm wanting to be. And it goes with accordance of where you're going as a person. What kind of person are you trying to be? You know, and when I talk about this thing when it comes to intentionality, people are like, no, me, you're talking too much into it. Just let people be how they want to be. You got to be intentional about everything that you're doing, you know. And I was
Mhm.
telling, you know, my girl, I said, listen, I'm not even bothered about how we are right now, chilling, talking, whatever. What I'm actually looking forward to and thinking about is how we handle conflict when it comes up, or how we handle long suffering, because it's not a question of if it's going to come, it's a question of when. And I think the
Mhm.
problem we have in the world today is people still sit down and tell themselves, you know, oh, it's going so well. He's the great guy. She's a great girl. We love ourselves. And then, but there's this invisible and unconscious thought that it's just going to be like this forever. When in fact, you've seen test cases, whether it's from your parents, too many to know that at some point, all that lovey dovey thing, the real test is going to come and hit you guys. It can come from anywhere, pregnancy, whatever strain. You know, they always say like the center is tested, it starts to crumble when pressure. The real people, the real person, the real character in a relationship comes when pressure comes in. As long as there's no
Mhm.
pressure, everyone is good. But and pressure is gonna come. It might be from kids, it might be from you, it might be from your family, it might be from life, might be from work balance problems, anything. So for me, I always sit down and say, listen, I know this is gonna come. How am I gonna respond? How am I gonna act when this comes up in this way? So I'm listening to podcasts about how you respond in conflict situations. I'm listening to podcasts and how you train yourself. I'm listening to people and talking to people how you train yourself to become. So it's honestly, it's still the same thing that you do in your daily life. It's preparation. When you know where you're going to,
Yeah.
you understand that you're going to be with a partner. And when you're going to be with a partner, there's going to be conflict at some point. You have to prepare if this comes up. You have to have contingency plans. You have to even prepare on how patient you want to be, how you need to be patient in a certain way, how you want to be able to receive. And you have this conversation. I do it. And you know, one of the things that I always tell people is like, no matter how bad the situation is, when people are trying to tell you something, make sure you receive it. Always be able to listen and receive. When you receive, don't receive with the intent to respond. Receive with the intent to understand, and then you talk back. So not to really take us round and round, to let you to just take it straight to the point. If I'm communicating with someone about my boundaries and I know my power, there's no need to react. And if I'm not reacting,
Mhm.
I'm not going to be disrespectful. And if you do feel like you're in a place where you're very hot or shook, take some time to yourself. Hey, listen, I don't think I can have a conversation right now just because of how I'm feeling. I'm going to need a little bit of space. I'm going to need a bit of time. And then I'm come back and then we're going to address this. And then you come back and then you address that accordingly. And the person will get the point.
Okay.
Yeah, I like that because, and just to add to what Akan said, I believe that it's very important for us to really get to know ourselves and embrace the real person, because to know yourself is to grow, to lead, to guide yourself, because then you're able to understand what are the things that trigger you. No, I know that's a word that's been abused, but yeah, we all have things that trigger us, because we're all emotional beings. But knowing those triggers allows us to preemptively manage it. So when it shows up, you know how to address it, like Akan said, responding. And that knowing also allows you to show up authentically, because most people are playing a role. You meet a nice guy, well dressed up, has a bit of money or a lot of money, whatever, whatever. You want to play up to be like, oh, playing up to be the kind of woman you think he would want in his circle. And I don't think any of us here is not guilty of that at some point. But like I said, with experience and time comes, we shed off some of those weights. Like, look, it is what it is. Come get this. This is what I have to offer. So just showing up authentically as ourselves will really help. And the sooner we begin to build relationships based on authentic people, not on actors and actresses who are playing a role, a guy who's playing a role that, he's this and is that, and eventually roles end. Just like you're acting in a movie, everything will end, last scene will be shot and it's a wrap. And then what happens after it's a wrap? The real person has to show up, and then the real person becomes a contradiction of what that other person has been accustomed to. So now lines become blurred and there's confusion and everything scatters. It's like, oh, this is not who you showed yourself as. A man who goes into a relationship feeling like, oh, there's nothing I won't do for you. I will be your mother, your father. I'll be Jesus Christ, Holy Spirit, and God for you. I will do it. No, you can't be everything to everyone. And it's important for women to understand that not one person can be everything. So when you go in with that clear understanding, you appreciate the fact that you have this partner who's able to go through life with you, but you also understand there's certain areas that you have to take full ownership of and make that happen for yourself, so that way everybody can operate in their zone of genius and find some type of stability in that space, and the boundaries are drawn. He's not responsible for certain things, or he's responsible for certain things. She's not responsible for certain things, and she's responsible for certain things. Another thing that I found is dressing the part, showing up as who you want people to accept you as. So if you're coming in a that, where do you guys think this whole notion or mentality from the men's side comes? Like, oh, when she's saying no, that means I have to push harder. She really means yes, right? It's because there is a programming that has been set over time that women come up with this pretense of saying one thing and meaning another thing, right? And then, of course, we have seen very left bad scenarios where men have been accused of things that they didn't even do, and they didn't even mean, or they didn't even understand or know that was happening. And then there have been situations where women have been perceived or assumed to be someone or something that they're not. So, authenticity is one thing that I highly subscribe for, and I believe that we would all do well to embrace. When we meet someone, let them know who they're meeting. Let them not meet a representative, and then when they get to be introduced to the real person, it's like, who are you? Like, where did you come from? And at that point, for some people, it's already late. They already married you, and they're like, what? Is this what I married? And all of a sudden they have to sort of restructure themselves, and there's frustration, and the lines are blurred. There are no boundaries, there's no safe place and stuff like that. So showing up as who you are is really, really important. But of course, that's more of a mindset development thing that we all have to have.
Well, it's interesting that you talk about Dr. OJ about being authentic and people being not being the representative. Like I often say, for me, I can only personally speak for myself that it's fine and nice to be wine and dine. Those things are nice. I have no problem with those. Every woman likes chivalry and love those things. But I don't tend to get caught up in the production. I don't focus so much on the production because anyone can do those things. But I often say if you can pay attention to the details and how a person shows up for you, meaning how they if they're actually paying attention to who you are and if they're listening, it shows up in the small details of how they treat you versus I said the grand production of the whether it's the chocolate, the roses, the grand gestures of fancy dinners, and all of these type of things. But it could be as simple as, say you like a specific thing, and the person know that this is what you like, and they make an effort. Say, okay, I'm gonna see Dr. OJ today. I'm gonna see Akan. Let me stop, take the time out of my day to say, let me go get your favorite cupcake or the favorite tea or something. Like to me, those are what tells you about if somebody's actually is not only sees you, but they're actually hearing you
Paying attention.
versus the all the grand things. And those to me are like authentic things about uh, human beings. So I guess what can I say? I once heard in a movie that the details is what make a person. I think it was Jump in the Broom. I believe it. The details is what makes a person. If you pay attention to the details of things, it's hard for you to miss things. But and it's so I know Akan said you have to, I guess, compose yourself and not answer people in the heat of the moment. And he gave you guys some healthy directions. Take a walk, people. Take five. I normally give myself 24 hours. I always say I can't answer this right now. I need time to process it.
Uh-huh.
But there are the days when these people test your Christianity, and you have to remind yourself that I am saved. You're a child of God. I am just saying we have all been there. And but what do you do in those? I get it. I heard you. Take a drive, walk away, come back from it. Don't, as Michelle Obama said, when they go low, you go high. But there are times, the Lord knows, you just want to go low. That's what I'm trying to figure out because we have all been there. Like, what do you do in the moments when you just want to go low, especially when you are at the breaking point? Because we're talking about relationship, and you have some people that will push you to the breaking point. I've known of situation. People have walked away. They have said nothing. They
Yeah.
ignore them. They keep doing what they think they're supposed to do. And these people are consistently badgering, abusive, verbally, mentally. And and you just get to a point where you're like, okay, I've had it. And you tell them all the colorful things in the world. I think sometimes those are the only language certain people understand. Like they don't understand decency. That doesn't work.
Yeah, so that's where we're talking about consequences, right? That's why we're saying you have to be ready to roll out the consequence
Consequences.
carpet.
Okay.
Yeah. Consequences, you have to be ready to roll out
Okay.
the consequences. And even with consequences, it's still tricky. You say they keep doing, how long did you let them keep doing that?
Mm-hmm.
Well,
That
you I guess you
that's your
treat people teach people how
accountability.
to treat you. So
That yeah,
yeah.
so that's your accountability. How long did you keep let them doing that they thought they could continue to do it? How long did it take you for you to address that? Because
But can we
yes,
acknowledge though that there's different types of relationship because you have some people that we're not just talking about dating here because we know this is a show we talk about
mhm,
relationship stuff. What about people that are in marriages and you feel like you have nowhere out and you feel like you're stuck. And I think although there's always alternatives, I think it's harder. You have children that is involved, years invested, finances, all of these things tied up. So like those are some of the things I'm talking about where you feel like, okay, what do I do? Like I have done everything that I can do and I feel like I am stuck.
part of love and commitment is figuring out how to carry out positive reinforcement. There is
Say this in
always
layman terms
room,
so we can
there
all
is
understand.
always
It sounds
room for there's always room for positive reinforcement. If the positive
okay.
reinforcement you have for somebody you love, because the only reason why you're going through pain to find how to positively reinforce is because you actually do care about the person. If
Okay.
that doesn't work after when you've used your thought and you've done all those things, then that means you're in a place where you should not be. That means it's really bad.
Hmm. Okay.
Yes. That means it's really bad
Okay.
because think about it this way. If you go and act out what you're acting in the days where you feel like, help me Jesus, or I'm not going to be able to hold up to this and everything, there's consequences for that. And that's what we're seeing in the world today. Yes, you can make the
Okay.
excuse that the person did it so much, but then now you have to face the consequences of your actions based on how because now you're definitely reacting. You're going to face the consequences. So my thing is, but that's also part of the problem when people don't think about what they should do when these kind of things come up, because they will come up. So now you gotta face the actions of you have to face you're going to face the consequence of your action because you allowed it to stay too long, or because you didn't think of how to handle it in a healthy way, or make a stand in a way where it wasn't. So now you're reacting, and it's a problem. Sometimes some people don't survive that, some people do. And so it's like these things, behaviors have to be learned. I know sometimes people feel like there's a shortcut to it. No, this is why we must seek knowledge, like our lives depend on it. There is a methodology to going. It's not absolute, but
Yeah.
there's things, there's behaviors, there's patterns, there's things that work. And I feel like that is part of the work in like different relationships, whether it's in a marriage or whatever. You have to learn it. Sometimes learning the positive response, it might not actually be from being aggressive. It might actually come from being subtle, which is one of the ways that we are having problems, especially like when it comes to women, where you feel like the way for you to let your husband understand, it might actually be from you actually calming down and doing things that you normally wouldn't do, and your husband becomes scared. Like, wow, she never does this. How is she getting up even after what I did? And she didn't raise her voice at me. She didn't. Oh, something is up. And now they're not begging you, please. What did I do? Tell me. I must have done something for you, because because they're waiting for you to react, and now you're not reacting. You're just going about your business, but you're doing everything in the house. So this thought process has to go on. That's my recommendation. You know what I mean? And don't
Yeah.
forget, it doesn't mean that we are not humans. Like, as human beings, there might be times when we'll have to let go or whatever. But what I'm saying is that, with that being said, please understand you have to face the consequence of that action that you commit. You have to face the consequence of that day that you lost it. You have to face the consequence of whatever happens then, and a lot of times it's not nice. So this is all part of accountability, and this is all part of the bittersweet, you know, bittersweet reality of relationships. It's like this. So yeah.
Okay, I received that. I get you. And what are your thoughts on, I mean, Dr. OJ? Because
I
Con
agree
said a
with
lot, but I accept
you
it.
know what I was saying is sometimes then the lines will scatter. You will completely scatter the line. That's a given. No matter how calm, soft, your feminine energy, you're cool, you're calm. At some point, that cool calmness, whatever the situation is, something might happen, could happen, that will take that softness and make it into something else. But what I always say is this, right? As quickly as the line scatters, is as quickly as you need to bring it back into position, because you don't let it fester for too long. So what do I mean by that? Something happens, you blow a fuse, you blow your top. Good. But once you come to the realization of that, you should quickly be able to come back into the
Mhm.
situation to say, okay,
Yeah.
I overreacted. I'm sorry. Why or what, prompted that reaction is known, but then you own the part of you, because just because when someone does something bad to you and you respond negative or you react negatively, it doesn't automatically make you right. Right? It doesn't automatically give you that, oh, yeah, he deserved it, or they deserved it. No, it doesn't. It's about each person. So, as quickly as you take the lines out of position, is as quickly as you need to bring it back. Take ownership. For me, like, even I tell my kids, I'm like, hey, I'm not too big to apologize. When I feel like I overreacted to something they did, I yelled inappropriately when I could have been like, oh, a bit more chill about it, or even just spoken more softly about it. I quickly call them and say, hey, I'm sorry about that, but here's the situation. Let's address the issue so it doesn't happen again. So, as quickly as things blow open, as quickly as we need to bring them back into place so that the boundaries are set. And yes, while some people might be a bit more difficult and maybe they have allowed, like a cancer, the behavior has persisted over time and it's now become a thing that is blowing your fuse. Then, once it gets to the point of blowing your fuse, at that point, you know that something has got to give, because if it happens like that, then that's really threatening the entire ecosystem that you guys have built. So that is the point where you know something has got to give. Then each of you, or at least one person, has to now look at, okay, what can we do differently to make a change? But as quickly as that line gets blown out of position, we need to be responsible enough to get it back in position. I believe that strongly. And I think everybody, no matter how hot headed, no matter how bad or drastic the situation is, everybody can actually make themselves do that. Just hold yourself accountable and do the needful.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. OJ. Thank you, Akan. So, guys, if you're just now joining us, it's time well spent. It's almost an hour to the time that we have been talking, and we've been talking about doing relationship correctly. I will encourage you guys to go back and listen from the beginning. We dropped a lot of nuggets. We talk about identifying your limits, figuring out what your limits are. First, setting boundaries for yourself before you can set it for others, then effectively communicating those boundaries, and also staying consistent. Dr. OJ just spoke about also making sure. I think there's a part in the scripture. I don't know exactly where to find it. Read your whole Bible, you'll find it. It's talking about not letting the sun go down and you being angry. That is basically what she was just communicating. If something is happening, address it right then and there. Cool off, come back, apologize, whether he or she, and address it in that moment instead of letting it sit and fester, and then you guys consistently blowing up with each other. And again, guys, boundaries are healthy. You just have to set healthy boundaries. Don't abuse the word or abuse each other in this, because we see that is happening a lot in the culture. We talked about that earlier in the segment, that right now the lines are blurred between people just abusing some of these health conscious words, taking advantage of other people, victimizing people in using some of these terms. So you have to learn to identify authentic people, showing up authentically yourself, are some of the things we talk about in order for you to put these things into practice so you guys can have a healthy relationship. As we encourage you guys on the show to do, is what we're here to do, is to evolve and to grow and to heal. And we are taking you along on the journey with us as we grow, learn, and heal, and as we talk about these things. So again, thank you guys for joining us in the Singles Connect community. Remember to subscribe, share, and like. Let us know what you think about the topic. Let us know about anything you want to see us discuss. And again, as it gets, guys, I encourage you to go back and listen from the beginning if you're just now joining us. I promise you, there is something of value in everything that we have said. You will find something that you can identify or take away from this. Do you guys have any closing arguments before we get out of here?
Oh no, I mean we've had a really wonderful conversation, but I believe in healthy boundaries being set from the get
Mm-hmm.
go. Gone are the days when I thought we'll make the rules up as we go along. I no longer subscribe to that school of thought. Let's set the boundaries. Let's say what we mean what we say. Let's align appropriately and keep it moving. If you're aligning with someone who is from the same school of thought that feels like, oh, let's figure it out, that's fine. But for some of us, we really want to know exactly where the destination is before we get in the vehicle with you. So yeah, let's align appropriately and set the boundaries correctly. And I think it would make for a better, longevity of our relationships and wholesomeness of what we're trying to build in our communities. Yeah, I love it. Thank you guys. See you next time.
Akan?
Yeah, I mean, everything's been said, but I would just say, know your worth, know your purpose, and know thyself, and set your boundaries and healthy ones, and stay accountable, as you go through situations, and also anticipate, based on where you're headed to, anticipate things that may come up, because you know the people that are involved in your life. Look at their patterns and see possible uh, conflicts of interest that may come up later, and or just anticipate how you feel like you would handle those things when they do come up, and it helps. It's preparation, and then you just leave who you say you are. That's all I have to add to this.
Okay, well said, everyone. So, once again, guys, this is the Singles Connect community. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you on the next episode. Don't forget, subscribe and like and share with someone. And just let us know what you think about the show. And we will see you guys on the next season.
Bye, guys. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.